What's up, Internet? You're tuning in episode 173 of Nintendo Noise, Slip Screen Games' weekly Nintendo podcast. I'm your host, Pete and Bessie, joined today by my very good friend and co-host, Mr. Ken Hicks.
What it do?
Welcome back, my friend.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Good to be here.
I'm excited. You brought a fun topic to the docket today. So if you are not a Redditor or if you're not familiar, there is a new Nintendo Switch 2 subreddit that's been popping off these last couple of weeks. I mean, I guess it's not new. It was created in 2021, speculatively, I suppose. But yeah, it's been popping off lately. And there's a really cool little video that is making the rounds right now where a user who goes by the name of Jard_dog over on Reddit created a little mock-up about like some like speculative Nintendo Switch accessories and how they could take advantage of the console's like two USB-C inputs and like the kind of like indented what's the word, like the fan, like the little like lip for the fan as like
that clips onto it.
Yeah, and the kind of like the fact that the connector pin for the Joy-Con seems to be, you know, like a universal USB-C, like you could do it either way. It's like flipping the screen and like you know, it's very cool. This is one that I think if you're an audio listener, I'll have a link down below if you want to go check it out so you can follow along, or maybe jump over on the YouTube channel where I'm gonna show the footage in just a second here. But it's a really cool little mock-up, and it definitely got me thinking about accessories for the console in a way that I kind of hadn't before. I you know, with the two USB-Cs, like my thought there was totally like, this is probably motivated by like wanting to give the ability to like have an accessory plugged in and have a charger plugged in at the same time or something like that.
Yes.
I hadn't thought about the idea of being able to flip it and like use it in different configurations like that, which this shows in like such a seamless way that it's very interesting. I thought, you know, usually this kind of fan render is the kind of thing that I'm like, cool or whatever, but it's not like thought-provoking.
It's not outside the realm of possibility even.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
This seems like very on brand for Nintendo to do.
And yeah, so, I thought this was really interesting that when you sent this to me, and I was like, yeah, we got to show this to the people. We got to talk about it a little bit today.
Like on the real, my favorite Nintendo console was probably the 3DS XL. I thought the two screens gave it certain games just like infinite possibilities, you know? Like specifically, I love the game The World Ends With You. And that game's been ported to like, you know, cell phones and consoles and things like that now. But the original one was made for the DS, where you can control one character with like the D-pad in a fight, and you control the other character with the stylus that it comes with, and you're kind of like bouncing back and forth, looking at the action on the top and the bottom. And that type of game is literally impossible to port. Recently, and you know, Nintendo's very specific about protecting their IP properties. But recently, they've been doing a lot more things with like Nintendo Online, like, you know, the free, you know, NES, SNES, and N64 games. If they have an attachment like this is the only way that they can really preserve the 3DS but also the regular DS games as well.
At least like in a mobile capacity. So, and I think we may have put the cart before the horse on this one. So I'll explain this bit here because one of the accessories that it's showing is like a second DS screen, right? Like it's a screen where you basically you turn it upside down, you plug the screen in so that the Switch is upside down and it's around the vent, and then it's creating like that second screen experience, right? And you know, I think it's something that does seem like it makes a lot of sense to have some kind of solution for that, considering, you know, how many games you have that are kind of trapped in that form factor. And we also know that there's that rumor about that second button, right? The C button potentially having some kind of like display interaction, right? Where like you could use that button to cast to your television screen, for example, and have the top screen, that would have been the top screen on your handheld on your television, and then the bottom screen on your actual Switch, similar to the way that like the Wii U functioned, right?
Close enough. Welcome back, Wii U 2.
Yeah, basically, it's like how do we take the parts of that technology that were cool and apply them to a console that people like actually want to own, I guess.
Yeah, and I guess like this is the big thing with the Switch 2. When it first got announced, a lot of people were like, okay, it looks just like the Switch 1, but bigger and a slightly different color scheme and more powerful. Like, it didn't really blow people away. And we were talking about it like, hey, that's all the Switch 2 needs to do. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. But by adding just one more USB-C port, and having different accessories that work directly with it, that gives everybody what they want, like a better, more powerful Switch. But it also makes it different from the Uprising mobile gaming handheld consoles like the Steam Deck, for example. This is something the Steam Deck can never replicate. Well, and then like,
I mean, it could, but it's like to what end? To
what end, right?
Yeah.
Like, why would they? Like, why would they have an attachment for a second screen? It makes sense for Nintendo because they have all these Nintendo properties for like over a decade's worth that capitalized on the two-screen technology.
Yeah.
That's not really done literally anywhere else. It's something that literally only makes sense for Nintendo.
Yeah, because it's like, I think you could probably justify the cost of research and development simply by re-releasing DS and 3DS games, right? It's like, okay, great. Like that storefront doesn't exist anymore, right? Like if you could give me a new way to buy those games on Nintendo Switch 2, like that opens up a massive library immediately, right? Like it probably wouldn't work exactly like that, but like, that I could easily see that being a path towards like hey, here's a Link Between Worlds remake, here's a Animal Crossing New Leaf remake, whatever, right? Like here's an updated version of this old game that you liked on 3DS that you're now nostalgic for, and now you can play it again, right? Super Mario with like 3D Land, right?
And if they really wanted to push the second screen, if this is for real, I really hope this is for real. If this
ends up
not
clear,
being real, then
this is not real. This render is not real. That doesn't mean
the
idea isn't
real.
I just want to be clear for the listener. This is a fan render. We're not speculating on whether this is a real render. It's whether or not this kind of functionality makes sense. And I'm with you that it does. I just want to be clear to the listener. This is a cool render that somebody made that we want to be real. This is not a leak. Just so we're clear. Just so everybody's on the same page.
Before we get like crucified in the comments, like they lied to us.
I do want to say, I don't know if you like jumped down into the comments on this initial post over on the subreddit, but the top comment right now is so funny to me. This person goes, and yet Tamagotchi Life 2 is still the most unrealistic thing on here, because the render is for on the second screen is for a Tamagotchi Life 2, which is so funny that it's like, that is probably the most unrealistic thing about this render. The other thing that they show is a webcam plugging into the top of it, which I think is interesting. Again, probably not something that you'd actually see, but I don't know. It's like I am interested in the idea of like, how do you make something like this, like, to your point, right? If we're not reinventing the wheel, right, with Nintendo Switch 2, what are we iterating on, right? Like, what are the things that you're going to level up? And the idea that you would level up something like online functionality and therefore maybe a webcam, is something that makes sense. Or, it's like, I think that one's a stretch, but I think that the second screen thing is just like,
I feel like that just has the opportunity to print money if Nintendo went all in. You can re-release the DS and the 3DS games, minus the 3D aspects, of course. And then if they really wanted to push it, they can be like, hey, this new Switch 2 game, you can play it if you just have the Switch 2. But if you have the extra screen, you unlock XYZ features, XYZ mini games on top of it. If they sell it for like $100, $150,
yeah, or
sell the Switch for 400.
If that the button like does the thing that we think it does, it could be as simple as that of like, well, yeah, like if you want to buy the second screen as like an attachment, the same way that you might buy like an extra dock, then you can, or you can use the native you have a television screen, then you can just, you can still access those like second screen features or whatever. It'll be interesting. I don't know how much I see them doubling down on that as like the next thing, but it is, to your point, it's like, I mean, it was a big part of their thing for a long time, and the idea that they would want to, in the same way that I think the Joy-Con and it having motion controller functionality feels like a natural successor evolution of the Wii Remote. And it's like, yeah, if you played a Wii Remote game, you can still, like, any Wii Remote game can be ported to a Switch because you have the functionality of the Joy-Con. You could make new games that function that way if you want to, but it's not a gimmick that you're, like, forced into. That's the thing with the dual screen is, like, is there going to be enough functionality that justifies it for the average person that doesn't want to play old DS and 3DS games? Maybe not, but it also doesn't really need to. Like, I think it's the same argument that people got into with like the PlayStation Portal, where it's like, who is this for? It's like somebody very specific, but that can be okay. Like marketing accessories in general are not really something you expect everyone to adopt, right? Like, not everybody's going to buy the Ring Fit controller. Not everybody's going to get a Wii balance board, but like,
not everyone's going to get like a $300 PlayStation or Xbox like Elite controller. You know what I mean?
Exactly. But
like,
somebody wants it, and that's why it exists.
And in this case, I think a lot of people would want it. But okay, so aside from the second screen and aside from the potential camera, what other attachments can you think of that they might do with this? Because like if they're going to do something with the two USB things, I find it hard to believe that they would add a whole second USB-C port just to give us the option of charging it one of two different ways.
No, I think you're right. I think it has to exist with the idea of you're going to plug a charger in one end and something else in the other end. Otherwise, why would you go to that length? Which is why I do think the second screen thing is like, it's not crazy. It's not crazy.
It's possible.
It's very
not
possible,
real, but it's possible.
I think it's reasonable. Beyond that, like my knee-jerk reaction is that it's like stuff that is unconventional in the same way that like Labo is, or that like the balance board or Ring Fit. Like it's gonna be such an odd use case that it's like I can't even predict it, because I never would have been like, they're gonna make a ring that you stick a Joy-Con on and you squeeze it between your thighs. It's like, okay, like, right? Like, you wouldn't predict that, but it comes out and you're like, great, that makes sense, right? Like, that's for somebody that has functionality. Not all are created equal. Ring Fit is a very good idea. Labo was not. That's fine. So it's like, my gut reaction is that it's going to be for some kind of like weird thing that like is like a gimmick, in the same way that like Nintendo loves a gimmick, right? More than like any kind of like super traditional functionality that I can think of. Do you have any ideas?
Like I feel like they're playing it safe with the Switch 2, right? Based on what they've revealed thus far. They're not calling it the Super Nintendo Switch. Nope, just Switch 2. Looks very, very similar to the old one.
That is a like boldly conservative move from them to call it Nintendo Switch 2. It's like, what a conventional choice, you know?
Yeah.
And like, I'm pro the name. Steve and I
like
for
it.
years were like, if you call it anything other than that, you're making a mistake, because the branding is so strong. And yeah, it's kind of weird, you know? It's weird for them.
Yeah, like they didn't want to have a Wii U fiasco. They wanted to put a clear number 2 in the title.
Right, exactly. It's like, nope, not an add-on. Like, this is the next one.
So like that leads me to believe that whatever they use for the USB-C port, because like the Switch is printing money and they want to continue printing money, I'm assuming it would just be something real basic, real safe. The camera is a safe thing, and it probably wouldn't cost too much.
I think the camera idea is one that I don't think it makes sense, because I don't know what that looks like. But I mean, it could be that like they want to set up, you know, like
What was it? Connect on your Switch. You
Yeah,
put the camera on there. You put the Switch on a table with the kickstand, and then all of a sudden you can do like a Just Dance workout routine.
Yeah,
or
or like
that.
for like eye tracking, right? Like something like that, where it's like, oh, like it scans your eyes, and like when you look to like it, like it can like read your body language in the same way that like like a VR. It's that same kind of interactivity, but instead of in virtual reality, it's just with regular gameplay, right?
Yeah.
That I think if you were going to go that route, like that would be the thing that would make the most sense. I think there could be like a social like live element to it of like, oh, like we want to have like a like because obviously they've been like very slow on
Imagine
the
streaming Twitch directly from your Nintendo Switch.
I mean, that's you can do that on a PlayStation. Or at least you could. I don't think you can anymore, but you could on the PlayStation 4. It wasn't a great experience, but you could do it. I don't think that's outside the realm of possibility. But I think I would be less surprised if it was more like they want to have like some kind of like peer-to-peer where it's like, oh, you and I are playing a game together and we can both connect the camera and then like I can see you and you can see me and we can play multiplayer and it's not it's like a more secure connection. It's just two people. You need to be friends, whatever. If you were going to go that route.
You know what you could do, right? You can have an attachment that's just like a external extended battery, maybe. You know what I mean?
That is definitely something. I don't think that would be a like from Nintendo accessory, but I guarantee that's a great call from like JSOX or like one of those, third party guys that like make Steam Deck accessories and stuff to be like, yeah, there's like a battery pack that you can just snap on the Switch and you can still have a USB port open.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So like, let's see, we got that. And
that's a good idea. That's a good call out. That's something that I think that makes a ton of sense.
Do you think there's ever a possibility of them just adding something that plugs into the USB port and somehow gives the Switch like more power? Like it makes it more powerful?
I don't. I think I think that the idea of like that basically like eGPUs, right, is like what you call that in the PC space. I think it's just it creates too many variables. Like I think Nintendo's whole thing is like they create the lowest common denominator and then that's what they target, right? It's like it's never about like when they put out the OLED Switch, right? Like it wasn't a Super Switch, it wasn't a Switch, 0.5, it wasn't it has a little bit like they did that with the 3DS, right? That had like an incremental like power increase.
Never got the new 3DS, just the 3DS XL.
Right. Aside from that, I don't think there's a precedent for them putting out a version that has more processing power.
I guess where my mind was going was the during the Nintendo 64 days, you had to get that memory expansion to play Donkey Kong.
Yeah, the RAM expansion, right? Yeah, I do. Yeah, so that's a good point.
That was where my mind was going. But you're right. They, especially with the Switch 2 being so new, imagine they announce a more powerful add-on accessory.
Yeah, and I think
that would be down the line, if ever.
And I think especially in the early days, like you end up in this situation where you're then targeting 3 different SKUs because you have games that are going to be coming out on Nintendo Switch, and then they'll need a Nintendo Switch 2, and then like a Nintendo Switch like plus, Nintendo Switch 2 plus. It's just like, no, I don't think Nintendo is down for that kind of thing. I think that's why I think that they have that NVIDIA software solution, right? Like I think they're betting on the idea of like AI upscaling being the way that they can deliver higher quality, like a higher quality final output resolution rather than like chasing, incremental hardware or whatever. And I think especially when you look at like how that's turned out for Xbox this generation and how it's been a headache for certain games to run on more than one device.
The Series X, the Series S digital, and it's just like
I think
why?
it creates brand confusion, and I think Nintendo's whole thing is like they have I think a very similar ethos to Apple in that regard of like no, you get the one that exists, and then when they release other ones, they have like it's 4 types of consumers, right? Like it's like, oh, the Switch Lite is like, oh, that's for kids. It's for a second Switch in the house. It's this, it's that, whatever. The OLED, that's for like if you're a tech resolution dork and you like OLED screens like I do.
With the larger screen, which off topic on topic, I'm still mad that, at least according to the leaks, I'm not sure it's confirmed, the Switch 2 does not have an OLED screen.
No, I'm
just
sure
has
it
a
doesn't.
large
I'm
one.
I'm so positive it's going to be an LCD screen.
Which,
at
I mean,
launch.
it's like, why? Why would you give it to us and then take it away?
To
But
me,
I
that would
digress.
be the thing I would, if you were going to do 2 SKUs, that's what I would do at launch, is give me an option to pay more for an OLED model. But I think it's the same thing. It's like, I think they just don't want to muddy the waters. They want it to be like, you get a Nintendo Switch 2 and everyone's Nintendo Switch experience is the same. And when we introduce
Maybe
that
a
later
color
on,
choice.
you can double dip. Or you can wait and buy it 5 years later and be
Yeah,
like
but I got to play that Pokemon right away on the best hardware possible.
yeah, there's no universe. I'm not buying it day and date, right? Like that's who I am now. I buy consoles when they come out.
Yeah. And let me
And that's
see.
why my PlayStation 5 doesn't work, and I need to send it in for repairs, but that's okay.
Oh, no.
I'm so upset, Ken.
When did this happen?
It just stopped working. I was just playing Plucky Squire, and it just literally like it froze, and I was like, oh, cool. Like I got to reboot the console, and then it just like was like beep beep beep, and that's every time you turn it on, it just does 3 beeps, and it's like no, this doesn't turn on anymore. So I got to send it in.
Yeah, but
These are the risks you take for early adopting, though, you know?
yeah, I do wish, though, right, that because like they announced a press conference like 3 months in advance.
I know. It's like, guys, give me anything.
Why?
Give me any other information, please.
Like you want us to wait till April?
I know.
And your console comes out this year? Like,
Yeah,
come on.
It does make you wonder, like, when is it actually out then? But
Yeah, it's definitely going to come out in time for the holidays. There's no shot.
yeah, for
If
sure.
I were to guess, because they also have the live hands-on event that we did not get tickets to.
I'm so salty about it. Chewy
like
got
a week or
one,
two
so
later.
we'll get to ask him how it was after he goes to the one in LA. But yeah, no luck for us.
Yeah, so if nothing else, I wonder, because this is my theory. I think that on Pokemon Day, next week actually, Pokemon Day is like February 27th.
Gonna get a new Post Malone cover. You think?
I hope so. Actually, no. Give me Sabrina Carpenter serenading Pikachu.
Oh my
That's
God!
what
Wait, I would actually love that. Wait, unironically,
Can we get
a Sabrina Carpenter Pokemon song? No, and it's like no shade. I'm mostly just riffing, but like that was the most bizarre thing ever to be like, it's Pokemon Day, everybody. We got a cover of Hootie and the Blowfish by Post Malone. What do any of those things have to do with Pokemon? I have no idea. It's like, why wouldn't you just have Post Malone cover a Pokemon song? Wouldn't that make more sense? Fine.
No, and then they gave him a one-of-a-kind custom Post Malone Pokemon card. They did that with Post Malone, Katy Perry, and who was the third person who got that? Their own custom Pokemon
KP
card.
got one? Did she do a song too?
Yeah, they released a whole like album for like that anniversary of
So
a bunch
funny.
of artists doing Pokemon songs. It was the weirdest thing. It was the weirdest thing.
I'm fine with the celebrity covers, but I feel like we have a really big missed opportunity by not having them cover songs from To Be a Master. You know?
True.
Do you have that CD?
Yeah. I don't have the CD. I think I had some sort of bootleg cassette or something like that.
Yeah, no, I had that. That was one of my earliest CDs.
I mean, not a bootleg cassette, a legal cassette, Nintendo. I would never bootleg your stuff. Do not
You were a
demonetize
child.
me.
I think it's okay. I think the statute of limitations on that one is passed.
I do remember seeing the Pokemon live. What was it? The live stage play back in the day.
Yeah, I remember.
With Mech
I
and
have
Mewtwo.
the lightsaber from it right here, Ken. I don't know. Wait, it's behind me. Where is it? Hold on. It's in this room.
Now that was fire. And then somewhere in here, and it's probably in like terrible condition now, but I have like a jumbo-sized Mecha Mewtwo trading card.
Oh, that's so sick.
Yeah, I wonder how much those things are going for.
Real talk, that's the thing I gotta hunt on eBay for. I feel like I want to get all the merch from Pokemon Live. What an event. What a time.
Oh, geez, that card's going for $80.
I'll buy that. I'd buy that for $80. Anyway.
But I digress. That's probably one of the coolest collectibles that
Yeah, it's pretty sick.
I have.
Yeah, I'm not gonna get up and disrupt the show, but if you guys want to see my Pokemon Live lightsaber, get at me in the Discord, all right? And I'll share.
If you want to see Pete's lightsaber, get at him in the Discord.
Get at me in the Discord. Awesome. All right. Any final thoughts on this one?
I mean, right this second, all we can do is speculate because Nintendo Daddy's given us crumbs, and they will not feed us.
Nintendo, stop being cowards. Tell me, confirm the second screen.
Oh man, but
I mean, to be fair, the last thing I'll say about this before we move on, it would be so okay, if you've been doing this as long as we have, right? I feel like you get that I don't know. I feel like I have like a sixth sense for it's like I can envision like this dialogue makes sense in a Nintendo Direct or it doesn't, right? Think about the fact that you could be like, it's the Nintendo Switch 2, 2 screens. It's like, dude, that would be such an easy marketing beat. Like, it's like it literally writes itself.
Oh, man.
It could be. It could be.
2 screens, the Nintendo Switch 2.
Look, it don't need to be smart to be good.
You know what? I'm cool with it. I'm cool with it.
Awesome. All right, so we got a couple other stories I want to jump in here today that are definitely bigger stories, but are less goofy fun because they're like kind of just updates. There's not as much speculation to be had about as there is with accessories, but some stuff that could have some pretty big waves in the world of Nintendo. So the first one I want to jump into is that just last week, Nintendo established a new subsidiary. So in the way that, like, obviously we have Nintendo Prime, right, in Japan, Nintendo of America in the States, Nintendo of Europe, Nintendo, right, like, has these subsidies for the kind of major regions in which they operate, right? So we got a new one that has been called Nintendo of Taiwan. So this is not the first time that Nintendo had a subsidiary that operated in Taiwan. They had an old one that was called Nintendo Futen that was established like back in the early 2010s, and it closed in 2014. And that was Nintendo Hong Kong took over for like the whole region back then. And that was, if I'm not mistaken, I believe was right around the time that the Chinese government first was like lifting restrictions on non-Chinese video games being sold in the country. And it was like a big deal at the time that Nintendo was going to be selling Switches there. And that was like when they first started doing the cloud like streaming releases. And I remember that was like a big talking point at the time, right? So this new branch, right, is going to be taking over all of the operations in that region starting on April 1st, which is when the new like fiscal year kicks off. So like theoretically, this is going to be the new subsidiary that's going to serve I guess all of mainland China as well as Taiwan, and then maybe some other related markets in like the oceanic region potentially.
So to be clear, or just to clarify, I should say, this isn't like a new team that's going to be developing new games for Nintendo.
No,
it's Taiwan.
It's
going to
like,
be more so for like public relations and
like
international
business development,
editing,
right? Like when you think about like the role that like somebody like Reggie Fils-Aimé, right, like played at Nintendo of America, his role, right, like during his tenure, and obviously it's what's still going on now, but nobody knows that person's name now because they've kind of moved away from putting those guys up front and center. You know, the job was Reggie. How do I, as a business person that understands the region of North America, right? How do I tailor Nintendo's products to best succeed in this market, right? So, like for example, one of the things that like if you read Reggie's book, right, he talked about how he was instrumental in pushing for Nintendo to package in Wii Sports with the Wii, And that was the thing that happened in America but didn't happen in Japan because
Oh, I
culturally
didn't know that.
they felt that it made it seem like the game was less valuable to give it away for free. And he was like, no, it's going to be an evangelizing product in America. And it was like a thing where it's like, all right, we'll give it a shot. We'll see how it goes. Obviously, it was a big success. So it's like, that's kind of the role of like a Nintendo of America, of Europe, of now Taiwan, is like, ideally, the folks on this team will have that kind of like cultural knowledge of like what Chinese gamers are looking for, and the business knowledge of like how certain like marketing messages might be received, or just like things like that, right? Like, how do we tailor the next Mario game, the launch of Nintendo Switch 2, so that it appeals to Chinese consumers, and that like those gamers who have their own attitudes and whatever, right, like are being served in a way that like makes Nintendo like really get roots in the region, right? So yeah, it's like very much a business marketing, kind of layer more than a creative one. But that doesn't necessarily need to be permanent either, right? Because it's like, you think about like in America, right? Like Nintendo has a relationship with I'm struggling, the Metroid Prime team. Oh gosh, can you look it up? I can't think of who it is right now.
You said the Metroid
Prime team, yeah.
That was not Retro. Was it Retro?
It is Retro. Thank you.
Yeah.
Like they're from the States, right? So it's like, I would imagine that when it comes to dealing with that team, right, Nintendo of America is probably their primary contact, and then they communicate with it. I'm speculating on that, but I would imagine that talent development in the region would also probably fall under the purview of those subsidiaries to some degree, right? But primarily, it's not about developing a new team in Taiwan to make games. It's how do we sell our games in Taiwan and the region beyond, right?
Yeah, so like, admittedly, I'm looking up something on Reddit right this second. And full disclosure, I am not an expert on this topic in any way, shape, or form. I'm just going to read this Reddit comment and take it at face value, but with a grain of salt, okay? I'm like, okay, so how does this exactly affect things? And this one person commented that right now, no one sells eShop cards in Taiwan, as there isn't an official eShop there, but the prices on the physical games and cartridges are lower there, and maybe this could lead to like a change there, if true. And if I'm wrong, please correct me in the comments.
That's something that I know like does take place in other regions. Like, we have price parity in America, so I think that sounds a little bit like off, but like that's something that like Steve and Max have commented on a lot. In the UK, you can buy physical games for cheaper than you can digital games often. That's pretty common. So yeah, it's exactly that kind of thing though, right? Like, I wasn't aware that there wasn't an eShop set up there. So like, I would imagine that the role that they're going to play is like navigating relations with the Chinese government and making sure that you're following all of the rules to set up a Taiwan-centric eShop that will probably filter out certain games that are like, that contain content that is illegal or controversial in the region. Because like that's another thing actually I didn't even think about. Yeah. Localization is a thing that these teams do, right? Nintendo of America involved in localizing the Japanese games to the American market. So that's the other thing, right? Is like, if there's maybe like, like, here's a great example, right? I can't remember, Castlevania, I think it is. Castlevania, in the American version, has certain religious imagery removed from the game because it would have been controversial
too much
in America because of the religious right and their desire to picket video games all the time in still to this day, but quite a bit more in the 80s and 90s. Or like the and this is unfortunate subject matter, but it's a good example. The swastika, right? Obviously co-opted by the Nazi party, but it's a symbol that exists in Buddhist imagery for hundreds, thousands of years before, the existence of the Nazi party. So like in Japanese media, like you may see that, like that was a thing on certain Pokemon cards when we were children, and when you bring them to the States, or Europe or wherever else, like where that
Obviously,
imagery is
you
very charged and it doesn't have that religious connotation, and you've not seen it in religious context, right? You're gonna censor that because it's obviously gonna be received a different way. So it's like it's that kind of thing, you know. It's like, how do we make this product, you know, acceptable for the in this case Chinese market, right? In our case, the American market, you know, and on and on. So there was just like a quick statement that has been run through Google Translate, so grain of salt. But this is the, you know, a quote from the official announcement from the Nintendo Hong Kong website. They said that the subsidiary is established to, quote, further strengthen our business base in the Taiwan market and improve the quality of customer service. That's another thing, right? Is like if there isn't a local branch and you have dozens and dozens of these new consumers that are having customer service problems and they don't have a subsidiary where they can go to that like speaks their language, for example. Obviously, that would create some problems. And considering the fact that, like, you know, the Chinese market is the largest growing segment in video games, right? Like, there are hundreds of millions of people living in China, and they have an appetite for video games. They have only just in the last decade started to get access to games that are not from the country. So it's like it's a absolute gold mine if you can, at the launch of this new console, no less, right? Like, create a foothold in that region, and if Nintendo can become the de facto console that people play in China, in the same way that, like, PlayStation, for example, was able to do that in the UK, right? Like, because Nintendo had historically underserved Europe, PlayStation walked right in and became, like, the PlayStation is the dominant console in the UK, right? And it has been for a long time. So if you can do that, right, before the Xboxes and the PlayStations of the world show up and you know, are able to speak to that audience, then yeah, like you could, particularly with Nintendo, you get them young and then they're locked in forever. So if you can get a new generation of you know, Chinese consumers, like players, right, to be like, my association when I think video games is Nintendo Switch 2 and is, you know, Pokemon and Mario and Tamagotchi Life 2, then yeah, like
Tamagotchi Life.
That's going to be the thing. That's going to be how you grow the market base of Nintendo players in a way that you literally can't any other way, right? Like there is no other region that is as untapped. So yeah, I mean it makes more than a little bit of sense for them to be doing this now, and it's 100%, I think, motivated by, we got a new console, and, you know, we've already started, you know, courting this market. Let's corner it now. And yeah, I mean, it makes. You think they had the Taipei game show in China last year, and Nintendo.
The what game show?
Taipei, which is it's a place in China. And if you follow esports at all, Taipei Assassins is one of the big Chinese orgs as well. And yeah, they had like they put a ton of money into going to that show, and they had like a huge booth and were like very like banging the drum, like, come play Nintendo games. So yeah, I mean, they had like exclusive merch and stuff. It was like a big thing. So yeah, I mean, I think this is 100% them trying to be like, we want to own this market, you know?
And you know what? Not for nothing, there's money to be had there. So I can't be mad at capitalism, baby.
I mean, I can, and I am all the time, but I think this is fine.
Yeah. I mean, like, in regards to, like, you know, building a business and expanding your video games.
Yeah, selling more video games to more people is the type of, we're good with that.
That's the capitalism I can get behind. Laying off your workers who just launched Marvel Rivals, that's the kind of capitalism I can't get behind.
See, and this is why. Okay, I don't mean to get on a soapbox, but you threw me an in, so I got to do it. This is the problem, right? Because we love to be like, look at good guy Nintendo. It's because Japanese law doesn't allow you to pull shit like this. All right, we are ghouls over here in the West, and we don't give a fuck, and we got to do better. Anyway, speaking of,
we'll do better once we get rid of all. I'm going to stop. You didn't come here for these takes. I'm gonna stop right now. We'll talk after the show.
Exactly. Oh my god. Yeah, ask me about my anti-capitalist agenda.
I got you, Hassan Piker.
Yeah, let's talk about some more dicey financial stuff, because we got another big rumor that Pokemon Go, the studio behind Pokemon Go, Niantic, is reportedly, allegedly, in talks to sell the entirety of their video game business, because they do like other stuff, right? Like the technology that Pokemon Go is built on has been sold for like other applications, right?
That's why they're worth so much money.
Yeah, totally. And yeah, they are in talks to sell to a Saudi-owned company that is named Scopely, and they are owned by Savvy Games Group, I believe, right? And they have quite a few other large mobile games in their portfolio right now. They've been acquiring a couple different, they've been on like a buying spree, basically, which is not that's kind of been the par for the course the last several years. You've been seeing the Saudi government and Saudi-owned companies investing a lot of money in video games, which obviously, is another, controversial in the same way that the original expansion into the Chinese market was, because the government is very...
They have some human rights issues. Let's just call it what it is.
Yeah, right. It's like, and I think it's 100% like, it's an uncomfortable conversation, right? To have, for lack of a better word, like dirty money. Like money that like feels like it's coming from a unscrupulous source, right? And again, I want to be very clear, right? Like, it's human rights violations of the government. It's like it's not
nothing against the people.
No, absolutely not. And I think if you're listening to the show, you know that. But if you're a new listener, I just want to make it that very clear. So the word on the street, right, is that the number is somewhere like 3.5 billion would be the acquisition point. And I mean, this again would just be like the latest in that line of acquisitions. So like I said, Savvy is the parent company that owns Scopely. They only acquired Scopely back in April of 2023.
Yeah.
And it was for $4.9 billion, which is just an insane amount of money. Oh my gosh. Really crazy. And this was like, again, right? Like the Saudi Arabian government said at the time. I'm sorry?
Money isn't real with these type of numbers. It's like,
crazy.
What's 3.5 bill? Like
4.9. It's like, for like a company you've never heard of, no less. It's so crazy, but it's fine. I think that's the thing with a lot of these like mobile games. Like, you've never heard of the company and they own like 5 games that make $1 billion a year. It's just like, fair enough. But this was like, at the time, like the Saudi Arabian government said that they specifically wanted to buy a quote leading games publisher. And that included a bunch of big mobile titles like Walking Dead: Road to Survival, Stumble Guys, Marvel Strike Force, and Monopoly Go. A couple of those are some of the highest earning mobile games that exist right now.
Monopoly Go makes so much money, and I do not get it. Like,
yeah, I mean,
billions.
Yeah, crazy amount of money. And they also have purchased 2 really, really large esports organizations, 2 of the biggest esports organizations in the world, ESL and Faceit, for a total of $1.5 billion. So yeah, this is,
So like, before I say what I'm about to say, let me give the full disclosure that I am not an expert in international politics nor relations. So if I get some of the details a little off here, forgive me. But the big thing that makes me icky about this company buying Niantic specifically is that they're not buying it just for the game properties and the money. All of the money that Niantic gets, the majority, not all, but the majority of the money doesn't come from microtransactions. It comes from like information, like
Right.
data,
Selling data.
location. Like, you play Pokemon Go, it's like, oh, scan your surroundings and you'll get this free item. And then people do that by the millions. And like they just have like years and years and years of highly detailed location based data from around the world. And it's like, could that information potentially be used in a illegitimate way? Because they already are committing some human rights violations.
Yeah,
and if
I don't think
giving them the
that's a
keys to that
controversial thing
kingdom,
to suggest, right? Like when you're talking about like a country that has a history of human rights violations, right? Like that is a reasonable concern.
yeah.
And yeah, like I am right there with you. I'm not comfortable with it, and it's I think this is going to be a thing that we're really going to have to grapple with over the next couple of years because like at the time, right? Like there's a quote I have here literally from Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman bin Abu La Aziz. I believe that's correct. If not, apologies for the mispronunciation. I'm an American. I'm doing my best. So he said, Savvy Games Group is one part of our ambitious strategy aiming to make Saudi Arabia the ultimate global hub for the games and esports sector by 2030. And yeah, I mean, we've seen a lot of this, like small investments in big companies that you've heard of, large acquisitions of some that you might not have heard of, but that have these big portfolios. So yeah, I think in the same way that, several years ago, we were grappling with what it meant to be expanding the market to the Chinese government, I think it's gonna be a similar talking point over the next couple of years as we see more investment and more acquisition. And I think the question is how long until a larger organization like an Ubisoft or something like that, maybe that needs to be acquired, that needs an angel investor, becomes totally acquired by
bankrupt, or it's going to get purchased. Like Assassin's Creed cannot save them at this point, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, unless they go back to private sector, which they're talking about as well, which is like just totally removing, like not having a board, right? Like not having to like answer to shareholders, right? And then your metrics for success become a lot different, because when you're a publicly traded company, you need to make more money every single year, or it's a failure.
For shareholders,
and that's why capitalism is unsustainable. Because like so many of these companies,
I make $100 million one year and I make $99 million the next.
That's a failure.
Profit. How am I a failure?
Right.
Like that type of infinite greed. But once again,
well, it's no, but I think it is relevant in the context of this kind of conversation, right? Where it's like, when you're talking about companies like this, right? Like the original purpose of any video game developer, right, is like, yes, to sell a game and make money, but it's also to fund the next game, right? Like it's an artistic creative endeavor that exists in a free market, right? And it's like, that's all well and good. As soon as you become a publicly traded company, like literally by definition, your responsibility is to have incremental profits and small returns every quarter for your shareholders. Otherwise, you're like failing, like you're not fulfilling your fiduciary responsibility if you're doing that. And that is at the odds of good art and long-term sustainable thinking, because short-term returns are rarely the same thing as long-term returns, right?
True.
It's a rare business that figures that balance out. And I don't think it's surprising that many of the ones that do are not in the West and are not American, because our system is like totally not built for that, right? It's built for a company to grow and 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 then eventually collapse or never, and just keep acquiring things, right? But that doesn't really work for video games. I don't think that's a sustainable approach. Like when you look at a company like Nintendo, right, that like is sitting on literally billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars of money, it's because they don't overextend themselves doing things like acquiring Activision Blizzard for $20 billion or spending $3 billion on, or not 20, it was like 50 something, spending $3 billion on to acquire Bungie and then realizing that actually you don't want to make live service games, right? It's like they don't do that shit because like, it's literally
they know who they are and they stick with it.
But also it's because like if you do shit like that and then you lay a bunch of people off, you will be penalized by the Japanese government.
That's it.
And that's the reality of it, right? Is that like no business decisions are made altruistically. Business decisions, right? And that's the whole thing is like once you get to that level, that's what you're doing. It's not how do we make the best, most artistically satisfying Assassin's Creed game? It's how do we make the most money in the short term so that our investors are happy? And yeah, I think that's why we're seeing so much acquisition. That's why we're seeing so much truncation in the video game market, is because it's been big business for a very long time. And I think that is probably changing and that there is not going to be as much money to go around.
And people thought the boom during COVID would
just
be there
keep
forever.
Going. And it wasn't
going bigger.
And again, unsurprisingly, who is the company that capitalized on that the best? And this is totally, call me a fanboy, whatever. It's not. These are facts. Nintendo is the company that capitalized on that the best. They were able to drive record high sales for a console that was already like, 4 years old?
Yeah.
Yeah. So like traditionally, more than halfway through its life cycle, right? And they had record high sales, record high software sales. And what did they do? Did they overextend themselves? Did they buy a bunch of companies that they didn't need? No. They sold their products successfully. They didn't lay anybody off. They didn't lay anybody off. Some people get laid off, but again, not like mass layoffs. Not what we've been seeing across the
like
industry.
A predatory for a profit type of way.
No, it's normal, people moving around. That's going to happen at some point. Not to be callous, but they're not laying off entire teams because they put out a game and it flopped and then you know what I mean? Like it's like they move with this slower, more sustainable approach. And I think that like, because that's not the standard in most of these other markets, like I don't think I don't think stories like this are going to be uncommon. I think you're going to see more and more truncation and more acquisitions and more companies selling to entities like the Saudi government that have a ton of money and want to acquire IP and acquire, things that have worth.
Yeah. And, they don't want to go the way of Microsoft because the Xbox is not doing too hot right now. But I digress. I don't want to, beat down on the struggling console.
No, honestly, I think when you point to all those things, it really is just a really like, this is Nintendo's built different in that way. Like they don't always make the right decision. Like obviously, plenty of public missteps and failures, stuff like the Wii U or whatever. But like, yeah, I mean, I think when you look at how well they capitalized on the boom that happened during lockdown and how now they are like in a position where, we make this joke all the time where it's like there was that I think it was like a Reddit calculation. It might have been on IGN where they were like, Nintendo could not release a game, make no money for 10 years, not lay anybody off, pay everybody's like, they have an insane amount of money that they're sitting on right now. And Xbox, PlayStation, like all these other major players could have done the exact same thing and didn't.
Well, the thing, I'll give Microsoft this. Microsoft Gaming doesn't have as much money as Nintendo, but Microsoft has it's worth way
fine.
More than
they
Nintendo.
They can spend $50 billion for no reason. Fair enough.
But the difference is though, whereas Nintendo would be like, oh, we lost this money and we can't lay people off. We have to be better. Microsoft would be like, we lost this money, so therefore we're going to lay all these people off to stop the bleeding a little bit, even though they'll still have hundreds of billions in the bank.
Or again, to reduce their portfolio when it's like, why did you buy so many people then if you couldn't manage all the studios, right? Like, why did you go on this spending spree instead of again, just moving with more intention, right? Which is, I think, the thing that they've done so well. I don't know. Honestly, we got off on a fun tangent here, so we'll call it there for the day, though. Thank you guys for listening to another episode of Nintendo Noise. If you want to write in with your thoughts on Nintendo's expansion into new regions, the unfortunate sale of Niantic and what's going on there, or of course, if you want to speculate wildly on Nintendo Switch 2 accessories like we did today, get us down in those comments down below. So with that, thank you all so much for tuning in to another episode of Nintendo Noise, with a very special thank you to our Patreon producers for the month of February. They are, of course, Arnold J. Rimmer, Christopher Valens, Gabriel Hasselmeyer, a.k.a. Asobi, Project Julian, Susan Likes Cats, and Susan Still Likes Cats, and also Boobies, That One Kid Nick, Ty the Dude, Voodoo Vic, and Waka Hula. Thank you all so much for your support over on patreon.com/flipscreengames. Y'all the realest of the real, and we greatly appreciate your support of this and all of our sister shows. Remember, if you want to go check out those sister shows, the Steam Deck podcast or the Flip Screen Games podcast, you can head over to flipscreen.games. That's our website where you'll find all the ways to get involved with the community or the show. You can write in to drop us a line and get your thoughts read on the air. You could write in with a question or a topic for next week's show, or find all the other ways that you can show your support if you want to go above and beyond. However you choose to do it, that's the best place to go. If you're watching on YouTube, please remember to give this episode a like, share it with a friend, and click that notification bell so you never miss an episode. If you're an audio listener, please take a second to leave us a 5-star review wherever you get your podcasts. It really helps the show get circulated. So, for the crew, I've been Pete, he's been Ken. We'll see you next week.